Hello everybody, I am back, and today you get lucky because you get two videos. And this will be about the new-ish released Traxxas Mini Maxx, which of course is the smallest member of the Traxxas Maxx family. This was originally released about a few months ago, and I wanted to hold off before I got one myself. I wanted to kind of see what people thought about them. And opinions are relatively good. There is one controversy about these, and I will get into that. And in my opinion, it's a very big controversy and one that should be addressed. However, if it's not addressed, I will not be surprised because it is Traxxas overall. Everybody, I'm sure if you're into the hobby, you've heard opinions on Traxxas, but let's just get it out and take a look at her. Okay, I am back. So here's all you get in the package. You get the truck, obviously. You get the remote, which is the Traxxas TQ, which is kind of like their standard, entry-level base. There's really no special features about it. You get like this little charging brick. Uses the new style. I think it's, I don't know what, USB-C, I think. I don't keep up with them because it's like, 20 different USBs, but it does not come with the cable. So you get just the, the power adapter, I guess, and then the battery plugs into that, and then, the cable goes into that. And now the unique thing about this battery is, well, for one, it's a 3500 milliamp 2S LiPo, which is, that's a really good battery to actually include with the model, especially for this price. I suspect probably 15 minutes, maybe 20 out of it, but it was actually made exclusively for this truck. One note on this battery and charger, by the way. Whoops. This charger does require 100 watts to work, so make sure the brick you're using to power it with has at least 100 watts. So here I am with one of my 10th scale batteries, Traxxas battery 2. You see, it's about, I don't know, probably 75% smaller in both length and width. Then you get some extra shock absorber parts. These are preload spacers. I can explain what those do in a minute, and these are actually extra pistons to replace yours when yours wear out. So that's nice to give you some spare parts. And these are the so-called high-quality tools that have been the exact same since I got my very first one back in 2012. You get a hex wrench, you get a 2.5 millimeter, a 2 millimeter, and a 1.5 millimeter Allen wrench. So that, that should cover all of your tooling needs. Now this is like the parts book, I've always called it. It has the part number of every single part or item used to build this vehicle. Every single one is listed, and it also has the exploded views. And now this is to show you how to take it apart so you can repair it or take it apart for maintenance, because these things do require maintenance. And every single thing's listed, and the OEM part number is there. So you get that. And then you get the quick start guide, which is not very detailed as usual for quick start guides. Here's the vehicle. Now, this is not my first time touching one. It's my first time owning one. It will be my first time driving one. But I've looked at them before at the Hobby Town, and originally I passed on it because I wasn't a big fan of how the suspension is. Front feels very nice, but the rear, look at that. You see how it sags and it doesn't come back up. It feels very sticky, and they were all like that. Now, I'm wondering if it's intentional, because again, they're all like that. So, anyways, this is a 1/16 scale monster truck, and is the smallest member of the Maxx family. So about 10 years ago, actually, in 2015, Traxxas launched the X Maxx, which is just this gargantuanly large truck. And they cost, as of now, I'm struggling like a muff up. They MSRP on Traxxas' website for $1,099.95. Now, I will probably never review one of those, or at least buy one. Traxxas, if you're watching, if you want to send me one, please do. I will gladly review it, but I will probably never buy one because, for one, frankly, it's just way out of my budget. That's more than I'm willing to spend on an RC car. And two, I have just no interest in owning something that large. And I feel like a lot of people felt like that. So a few years later, I'd probably say, if I had to guess, maybe 5, if I remember correctly, they launched the Max, which was the next step down. It was a 1/10 scale that was a much more affordable than the X Max. It currently goes for $569.99. And it's just a lot more convenient. Again, it's 1/10 scale, which is kind of like the average scale for RC cars. If you think of an RC car, you go to any hobby town, they have the little, display case or the desk. And most of those vehicles there are 1/10 scale. So that's about how big the Max is. And then last year, I think it was officially, it was like November 20th or something like that. That's when this was officially launched. The Mini Maxx, which again is the smallest member, also the most affordable, because it is $249.99 through Hobbytown. Does come with a battery and a charger, and 1/16 scale, so smaller than the 1/10 scale. And they advertise they can actually fit in the backpack. That's kind of like their marketing scheme about how small this thing is. Now, one thing they heavily advertise is, even though it's a 1/16 scale vehicle, it uses a lot of 1/10 scale parts. For one, you can see that steering servo is huge for this thing. That's a 1/10 scale steering servo. It is the 2056, which they've been making that thing for probably 2 decades now, that servo. The diffs are, wow, stiff, which is good for, being able to do like power slides and drifting and stuff, and won't be diffing out. And now the power system. This is the Traxxas BL-2s system, which again is a 1/10 scale system. It was originally designed for the 1/10 scale. I actually had it in my 4x4 Rustler that I've since sold. Moved on to other projects. That's what I do. That's how I do this, in case you've ever wondered. I buy, try, and sell. That's what I do. So it is a 1/10 scale system in a tiny little truck. So these things are, I've seen videos, they're pretty quick. Now this BL-2s system is only rated for 2S, or 7.4 volts. Traxxas does advertise, however, that this is 3S ready. So what that means is you can slap in a Traxxas Velineon system and get a 3S battery, which actually I'm curious, speaking of the battery, but and they're ready to go. Now, I mentioned earlier there's a controversy. The controversy is people have actually doing that claim, testing Traxxas, promising this is 3S ready. They have been blowing up differentials. The one I've seen the most going out was actually the rear. Now, the interesting thing about the diffs is this uses planetary style diffs, which I'm actually going to take this apart and take a look at those, because I'm interested about that. But it's not the standard, I guess, car style diffs. They use planetary. And now the problem that people have noticed is that it's actually, they advertise stainless steel, but it's actually more like pot metal, which pot metal is kind of like the lowest grade quality of steel that can still be called steel. And they have not been holding up to 3S power so far. So hopefully, I'm sure they got wind of it. If they'll ever fix it, I don't know. With it being Traxxas, I would not be surprised if they never fix it. But I do have a Velineon system. I'm actually going to put the Velineon system in it. Because I'm just curious. I'm not going to do 3S because I'm not interested in having something that can do 60 miles per hour. But I am interested to see how they would hold up under the increased torque of the 3S. Now again, it is 4-wheel drive. The diffs are surprisingly stiff. Front suspension feels very nice. It does have independent suspension on all 4 corners. Again, the rear, I don't like the rear. I don't like how it, I can hardly fit my middle finger between the bottom skid plate and the, my desk, unless I bump it up. I don't know why. So it's gonna squat a lot in acceleration. That's kind of the impression I get from that. And now, along with the drivetrain, the shock absorbers are actually 1/10 scale. They're actually the exact same shock absorbers that they use on most of their 1/10 scale vehicles. And these are called slider shafts to some people. Drive shaft, slider shaft, you can call it whatever you want. They are not 1/10 scale, but they're slightly bigger than 1/18 scale. They're actually they're kind of exclusive to this particular truck because it's a proprietary size. And now this is an all-new chassis for this. It's called I think it's called just the Max chassis is what they call it. So it's not shared between any of their other models. Well, it is with the Maxx family, but it's an exclusive chassis just to this family. And it's very, very rigid. I can't, you know, there's almost no, you can see there is some flexing. Yeah, you can see some right there, but this has some shock absorbing bumpers. That's nice. I use the heck out of those in my Rustler. Now the tires are very hard. Very, very, very hard, which is good for longevity. It's not good for traction, especially on rough surfaces, because you want your tires to be kind of soft so they can kind of conform to the terrain. But so yeah, it does have all hex hardware, which is nice. Hex hardware is kind of the new standard. It's way better than Phillips. It doesn't strip as much as Phillips. And this also has modular, kind of a thing Traxxas has. It's called modular construction, where the entire front section and the entire rear section kind of divorces from the chassis, and it gives easy access to the differentials because you can tune them, because diffs are tunable. You can actually tune, I guess, the stiffness or how limited slip they are by just varying the viscosity of the silicone fluid that's in them. So, and the radio, it's a 2.4 gigahertz. Again, there's nothing special. So the cool thing about the 2.4 is a very short antenna. RC cars used to have very long, goofy antennas. Now it does have all waterproof. No, caveat to that. I'm gonna get to that in a second. But so all the electronics are waterproof. So that means you can blast through a puddle and not worry about breaking something. However, this has been a gripe of mine in the RC industry for a long time. RC cars that are waterproof are not waterproof. More specifically, it's all of the ball bearings in them. The bearings are not waterproof. They will rust, they will seize, they will get dirt and dust behind the seals, and they will actually lock up and seize. And I hate how manufacturers advertise RC cars as waterproof. For people that are just beginners, that are just, you know, ignorant and don't know better, which again, ignorance not an insult. That's a public service now, but calling somebody ignorant is not an insult. You know, it's a term. It means you don't know. People that are ignorant will blast these things through puddles having fun, not realizing that the bearings have, anytime you get an RC car wet, you have to take it completely apart, dry the bearings out, re-grease them, put them all back together. A lot of people don't know that because, you know, they're advertised as waterproof, so people just don't think about it. And I don't like that. So in my opinion, this is not waterproof. I don't see what's enjoyable about driving in the rain. So, you know, I just don't do it. I never get mine wet, besides in snow, because that's fun. And plus it snows, like, you know, a lot here. But, yeah, that's my first look. Uses H-arms on the bottom. The fronts are H-arms as well. And the rears, probably H-arms on the bottom. Yep, on the front. And so the differentials, which I'm going to take apart and look at, are actually 1/10 scale sized too. So again, this whole thing is advertised as being like a tiny little truck, but has like the toughness of a 1/10 scale and can take the abuse. And apart from the differentials, they seem to be holding up pretty well. You know, that's the biggest complaint people have. It's not cool to advertise something as 3S capable when it's just not. I don't think I'm going to have a problem because I don't plan on running 3S ever personally in anything I ever own. One day I probably, because I do want to graduate to like a 1/8 scale vehicle someday, so I will need 1/8 scale. But actually I want to see how that battery fits in there, and I want to see how quick that servo is. So I'm gonna get this battery in and get some batteries in my controller, and we'll see how responsive that servo is. And then here's the battery tray. It's actually clipless, which is very convenient. Probably be easier if I do it. Nope, can't do it like that. So you gotta kind of do it. Oh, it doesn't go like that either. It only goes one way. Oh, I don't like that. That's a lot of room. And they did not give you foam spacers. So you definitely want to make some of your own for that. Because you don't want batteries to move around at all, period. Because it will kind of beat them up. And then that just clips in right there, holds the battery in. Yeah, that's kind of tight. I'd still put a spacer. And so now press the power button. And that's it. Now let's see how fast this turns. I've seen faster. But again, the battery probably not fully charged. Oh. Yeah, so, okay. Cool. So now I'm gonna take it apart and take a look at those diffs, because I'm just curious about those diffs. All right, so one thing I wanted to note while I was taking it apart, I got the motor out and kind of pinion and spur cover assembly. Like you see, this does use fixed gear positioning system. So what it does is it helps eliminate stripped out spur gears, which is that plastic black gear right there, which is kind of like the main transmission. Pinion's metal. So gear mesh is basically how close the teeth of the two gears mesh together. And a very common failure mode on RC cars is you will actually strip out the plastic spur gear because you had your gear mesh incorrectly. So Traxxas and a lot of other manufacturers have introduced kind of like fixed mesh systems to where it has a bunch of presets depending on what size of pinion you are running. And in the full owner's manual that you can actually find on the website, there's like a little chart that kind of shows you which hole to use based on the size of your pinion, because the holes are they have letters corresponding to them on the website. So just wanted to point that out. And another thing I wanted to point out, you can see here, this is the spur gear driven directly by the motor, so it's kind of direct drive. You can see it does not have a slipper clutch, and I forgot about that when I mentioned one of the controversies earlier on. That's another one. A slipper clutch is kind of like a self-sacrificing thing where it's like a clutch that's designed to slip to help bleed off some power to save the drivetrain from sudden shock. People have been blowing out their spur gears a lot when going to 3S again, because there's no slipper clutch. There's nothing there to absorb all of that energy and torque from the brushless. So I did forget to mention that. So be aware, this does not have a slipper clutch. You do want to be aware of that when you want to upgrade to, if you want to upgrade to a powerful brushless system, you have to be very careful with your throttle. Okay, and now here is the rear suspension module, is what Traxxas calls it, removed. And to get to this point, it is 8 screws. You have one right here, and one right here. That is these screws. Then you have one right here and one right here accessed from the bottom, again, and that is this size. Then you have 3 in this lower skid plate, which is this size. And then once you get all those screws out, this entire section just kind of slides out. Now you kind of do have to pull down the lower skid plate. It kind of acts like a locking tab right here. You just kind of pull it down and the thing just pops out. Oh yeah, and another thing. So here's that spur gear. Again, not slipper clutched. And here is the drive shaft. That it is a plastic drive shaft, not aluminum. It is plastic, and it does ride on a ball bearing. And then the front diff, sorry, I'm very clumsy, has the same kind of spline. It meshes into the front diff like that. Of course, this is the rear diff, but you get the idea. It kind of meshes in like that. And so it's a shaft-driven 4-wheel drive system. Okay, and here is the rear differential. And now to get to this point, after you get the rear module divorced from the chassis, first you gotta take off this kind of upper bulkhead, which is just held on. It's just 3 screws. So you have the 2 screws for the lower shock eyelets that go into these holes. Again, you pull those out. It's actually the same size as the hardware used for everything else so far. So they've been using the same size. Actually, no, they're a little bit longer. Sorry. And then this one's, and then you have one right here that kind of bolts this to like the upper half of the diff case. And so again, 3 screws, and this whole thing comes off. And then you have 6 screws to get this cover off. And now one thing I did was I actually removed the upper H-arms. See, they're kind of bolted into the diff case. Well, they were until I, unbolted them. So so the diff case is also kind of a part of the suspension. So it uses these like screw pins, and these are lubricated. So you want to be aware of that. They kind of go in there. So I took those out. Now these are 2.5 millimeter drive. And then that allowed me to separate the H-arms, which kind of allowed me to split open got the half shafts, if you want to call them that, kind of separated. And then again, 6 screws to get this upper plate off. And then, bam, and then that's it. And I am keeping all my stuff separated. And then here is the diff. And you can see it's lubricated by this gray grease. I have never seen that before. And then there is the pinion gear. Again, it has that strange, mysterious gray grease. I wonder if that's lithium based or, you know, carbon based. But again, so this does ride in a ball bearing. And you can see your half shafts, slider shafts, whatever you want to call them, on the diff case. These ride in a ball bearing too. So now I want to take this diff, I want to open it up because I'm curious to see if Traxxas filled it. Sorry, I keep bumping my camera. I'm curious to see if it was filled with silicone fluid or if they went the cheap route and filled it with carbon-based grease. So next I'll get this open, which is just these 4 screws, and then we'll take a look. And here is the differential taken apart. And you can see it is filled with silicone, so that is very, very nice. That means you can tune it easily and not have to flush it completely out, because if they use grease, which some companies use grease to tune their diffs, well, not tune, to do it factory fill because it's cheaper, but if you do want to tune it, means you have to get it completely out, because silicone-based lubricants and carbon-based will not mix. It's like water and oil. It ain't happening. So I do like that, and you can see it is sealed, so it is like a paper seal right there, the little, I guess copper colored thing. I'm not sure what that material is, because I'm not gonna get my fingers dirty to look into that. Mainly I was just doing this to see what they filled it with, but so it is sealed, so it means in theory it should kind of stay in there. And I'm trying to save my grease, but see, that's kind of the action of a differential. Of course, a diff, if you're watching this, you probably know, but if you don't know, then that's fine, you know. I'm glad I'm your learning guy, but a diff allows both wheels to spin at different speeds, which is helpful for going around the turn. So real life cars have diffs too, but they look different than this. They don't use this style. At least not mainstream. Some cars did early on, but so yeah. I'll get this back together and I'll get my final thoughts on the review. Or not the review, this ain't a review, but now here she is all back together. So yeah, I've been looking forward to this. Oh, I never connected the motor back. Bam, now she's back together. I have been looking forward to this. I'm glad I did decide to finally get one. Again, I'm not sure, I don't like that rear suspension. You see how it kind of just, I'm definitely gonna put some of this preload spacers I mentioned, which again, how I said to work. So basically you just kind of, oh, that's why, because there's hardly any, interesting. Okay, so I want that's either a manufacturing defect or a design defect. You see there's no preload on these springs. You see that? I wonder if it fell off. No, it's still attached down there. Whoops, sorry. So yeah, well, that's interesting. Anyways, so you basically snap them on the shock button, they kind of preload the springs, and that's how you adjust the ride height. So it definitely needs preload in the rear. I wonder, wow, the front's like that too. Yeah, I'm definitely going to be adding some preload to this thing before I run it. But yeah, thanks for watching. Clipless body, you know, kind of uses these pull tabs. It just snaps into place. Snip, snap. You're ready to go. And I'll looking forward to running it. And I'll post up some thought videos on it after I get some battery packs through it. Thanks for watching.